probably safe to say that the 1980s, as far as the horror genre is concerned, will forever be defined by its slasher flicks that seem to be released at a seemingly endless pace. But the money train could only move at this breakneck pace for only so long before things would inevitably go off the rails. And off the rails things went. By the time the 80s came to a close, so too did the slasher subgenre that many of us had grown to love. But here's the thing. After its oversaturated, sequel-heavy heyday in the 1980s, few industry experts could have foreseen what the years between 1996 and 2000 would bring in terms of resurrecting the slasher film while simultaneously bringing in new fans and setting new box office records. But before we get into all that, let's take it back.
Don't fuck with the Chuck!
Everybody's favorite killer doll, Chucky, may have originated in the 80s, but this little fella is a 90s icon through and through, and the start of the decade gave us what many would agree is best film.
Today's toys are tougher than ever. Take the good guy doll. He can withstand heat, hard impact, and the roughhouse play of a 9-year-old boy. He's Chucky, and this summer he's back for more in Universal Pictures' Child's Play 2.
Action and dummy!
Did you miss me?
In his hit film debut, Chucky was just another good guy until he ran into crazed killer Charles Lee Ray.
He's this bad man who got inside my good guy doll.
After Chucky came apart at the seams, everyone thought the nightmare was over. They were wrong.
And basically what Charles Lee Ray's soul was able to do was able to come back again when the doll was rebuilt. It had never left this piece of PVC plastic.
He never left audiences either.
People go crazy. It's unbelievable. People seem to have an inherent reaction to dolls. I think the fact that it's a toy and it's supposed to be cute, and everyone has had dolls or had sisters that had dolls and dolls in the family, yet hiding behind this facade of a doll is this maniacal killer.
I thought, a foul-mouthed killer doll could be a pretty memorable villain. I mean, it needed to be something very cartoonish. Red hair is always a sign of evil. So red hair, freckles, the red sneakers, the suspenders, all of that, just kind of a cute package.
And this package doesn't come fully assembled. It takes over 500 feet of cable, 9 operators, and Chucky designer Kevin Yeager to bring it all together.
The hair had to be just the right shade of red, and the eyes had to be just the right shade of blue, and you had to have just a sweet smile.
I'm gonna get you!
But with the demanding action of Child's Play 2, Chucky had to be more than just a pretty face.
In the first film, we used a little person and cut between the two. Kevin has now made it possible that we don't need a little person at all, that Chucky does everything in the film himself.
And he does plenty.
I wouldn't describe Chucky as an intellectual. He's more of a man of action.
He's just out to maim, murder, and raise hell altogether.
He's just pure nastiness in a small form.
He's a flirt. Chucky's a flirt.
He's a swine and proud of it.
All the thrills don't just happen by accident. There has to be a plan.
First thing we're going to start with is Chucky inside the cage with Andy crawling up the conveyor belt, and then get those stamps going.
Kind of a parody of a Hitchcockian murder scene. Chucky arrives at the house, and of course his goal is to make his move on Andy, but he can't when he first arrives in the house because he sees that Jenny Agutter is there with him. So he has to bide his time, so the camera sort of cranes down, and he's backing away from the stairs into the living room, and he backs right into the Tommy doll.
I'm Tommy.
Shut up, you idiot.
I'd like to be hugged.
I like to be hugged, I like to be hugged, I like to be hugged. So Chucky just grabs this statue and says,
This.
It's a great scene.
The biggest challenge, I think, again, for us, the crew was to get, and the puppeteers, was to get the doll to walk, to give a convincing walk. It takes all 9 puppeteers to work. We got a guy on legs, a guy on one arm, a guy on another arm, 3 facial puppeteers working the lips, the brows, the eyes, a puppeteer on the head and body, you know, moving the doll.
But it wasn't enough that he had to walk the walk. He had to talk the talk.
You've been very naughty, Miss Kettlewell.
We wanted something frightening, something that, I'm sure there, in the course of your life, there are people you sit next to and you talk to them, and they just don't sound right. And Brad Dourif was able to capture that quality perfectly. There's almost a Jack Nicholson kind of quality to it. It just doesn't seem right. It just kind of, say, you know, I don't want my daughter around this guy.
I hate kids.
So we can coordinate the jaw and the finger movements to actually pronounce words on the doll. He can say A, E, I, O, U.
A, B, C, D.
And Chucky's creators can pull the audience's strings, too.
I'd said to my wife for the first time that she saw it with an audience, I said, don't look at the screen, do this. And what she was seeing was people hold on and then grab onto somebody else. And that to me is good filmmaking. It's the greatest dating film in the world. So because they were always grabbing each other.
I think that they should have felt like they'd just gotten off a great roller coaster ride.
Beware, Chucky's not the type of playmate you leave behind.
I have one Chucky doll in the box, you know, and he's just like sort of entombed behind this plastic facade, and that's kind of a chilling image, and people definitely do double takes. Also, I have one of those Chuckies with the suction cups that's sticking to the window, so when people approach the house, they're greeted by that. It definitely gets a reaction out of people.
Sorry, Jack. Chucky's back.
After a minor highlight, things started to look sorta bad, and it didn't help that one of our favorite slasher villains was about to go out with a whimper.
Freddy's dead.
If you look at nearly any list ranking the Nightmare on Elm Street films, you will almost always find Freddy's Dead listed as the worst, though the hate may not be warranted. This is a movie that is no longer trying to balance the line between comedy and horror, and instead goes for pure entertainment. We have Freddy playing the NES, we have the infamous Johnny Depp cameo, and the montage over the end credits is just kick ass. Or maybe it is the worst. Whatever.
He was born in our dreams.
Great to be back in business.
Now, he lives in our nightmares.
Fresh meat!
His face is torn from our darkest fantasies.
Well, it ain't Dr. Seuss.
A terror that chills your heart.
I want to draw some blood.
An evil that will not die.
Sticks and stones may break my bones. Will ever kill me.
They keep on killing him. But Freddy just won't stay dead.
I am eternal.
Until now. Because now it's his turn to have a bad dream. If you dare, step behind the horror into a unique reality where the dreams are made. Freddy's Dead, the making of the final nightmare. See how we save the best for last. Born November 2nd, 1984.
It's the boy!
dies September 13th, 1991.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead.
Actor Robert Englund.
What makes Freddy so popular? I don't know if it's Freddy that's so popular. I think it's the films and the memory of attending the film. I think it's sort of a rite of passage for an awful lot of teenagers and adolescents to see if they can take a Nightmare on Elm Street film.
It was the worst nightmare I ever had. You wouldn't believe it.
Matter of fact, I had a bad dream last night myself.
The first Nightmare on Elm Street told the terrifying story of a group of small-town kids who are stalked in their dreams by a hideous fiend. Rachel Talalay, the director of Freddy's Dead, has been with the Elm Street series from the beginning.
Well, the very first Nightmare, I knew it was going to be a very scary film because when I read the script, I was scared, and that's very rare. I mean, I was really, truly scared. If you've been there for all these effects and you know exactly how they're done and you're still scared, you got to know that you've got a really scary film.
I think the real gimmick, the real hook of these films is the idea that they do take place in a dream.
If I fall asleep, there's going to be trouble.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
The dream sequence, that is the real root, the real key to the Elm Street films, is why audiences keep coming back.
I won't tell.
The fans of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, they're looking for clues as to when the nightmare has begun. And then they listen for sound cues and clues with the scenery transforming, or the perspective being a little extra forced, or the cinematography and the lighting altering, to really give them an indication that they're really into the nightmare.
Welcome to Wonderland, Alice.
They're always alert for when the dream begins and when the nightmare begins, and the various sort of rules, Robert's rules of orders that take place in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And the die-hard fans, no pun intended, can tell you what those are.
Everyone's got to dream, young lady. If you don't dream, you go.
One of the things I really like about nightmares that I think generally the older audience doesn't appreciate is that they just think that Nightmare on Elm Street is any old slasher film, and that they don't understand that this is a film that really delves deeply into the history of dreams and the psychology of dreams.
How long has this been going on?
Since the murders. She was fine before that. Now she thinks her dreams are real. It's this guy. He's after us in our dreams.
Yes. The souls of the children. Give me strength.
Over the course of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, Freddy Krueger has developed his own suave personality.
Always room for more. You know, Freddy was pretty gory in part one, but if you've seen any of the movies subsequently, you realize that Freddy doesn't stab or behead or decapitate people and drink their blood any longer. If he wants to get even with you, he finds out your tragic flaw.
Bon appetit! Open.
He finds out that she's bulimic, and he helps her binge and purge, you know. He stuffs her to death. Freddy finds out she's afraid of cockroaches, and he turns her into one, and it becomes kind of wonderfully Kafka-esque. So that there's an awful lot of that kind of formula to these films, where the audience is anticipating and looking forward to how Freddy is going to deal with one of his victims. And we've done that a lot with humor in these films. And I think that's probably, if there's been any progression, it's been that they've allowed me to sort of explore this sort of relish and humor that this sort of demon has.
You can check in. but you can't check out.
And all these things together have kind of, you know, brewed and stewed and given us the right flavor that's attracted an audience. And Rachel has a lot of respect for these things like I do, and I think they bear repeating just in a fresh way, and I think Rachel's going to have a lot of extra fun with that for the fans in Part 6.
In the final nightmare, the filmmakers reveal for the first time the secrets of Freddy Krueger's twisted childhood and family life.
Freddy! You ready for it, boy? Now it's time to take your medicine.
Thank you, sir.
In Nightmare 6, we have Freddy dealing with his past, as well as all our kids dealing with their pasts. We've taken Springwood, you know, Freddy's town, into the future and given a whole new twisted bent on it. And it has a little Twin Peaks edge, has a little futuristic Village of the Damned edge.
Kids.
I personally have worked to turn Freddy into a sort of combination of the Freddy we had before with a few elements of Bart Simpson added into it. He's just really become an evil, evil child.
Now I'm playing with power.
I don't consider that I've done 6 horror movies. I consider I've done 1 role, you know, Freddy Krueger. And it's a chance every once in a while to get it just the way I want it, to dance it a little bit, or to really let go and lose my control a little bit, or to really put in an extra little push. And it's kind of fun because with Freddy, I can do a little bit of that. I change the voice, I change the way I move.
Get out of my head!
He really is the new Frankenstein, the new Dracula. It's really neat to think about being part of a, you know, something that will be historically just added to the great horror figures.
Kids. What happened? Let's get out of here.
And we're really kicking out the stops on this one. I don't know how we could top it.
First, they tried burning me. Then, they tried burying me. They even tried holy water. But I just keep on checking.
Freddy wasn't the only slasher heavyweight getting a send-off. Jason Voorhees would soon get booked a one-way ticket to eternal damnation.
Well, what better time than Friday the 13th to open the last of the Friday the 13th movies? The title of this one is Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. Throughout 13 years and 8 films, Jason, the hockey-masked killer of the Friday the 13th films, has hacked his way into the hearts and other body parts of audiences. Now, in the 9th and final movie in the series, Jason meets his match and goes to hell. In honor of his death, Jason is being immortalized at the Hollywood Wax Museum, and we unmasked the man behind the mask, veteran stuntman and actor Kane Hodder.
It's the most fun character I've ever played.
Kane has played Jason in 3 films and says he gets to help come up with ideas for the killer's murderous devices.
There was a, what they call a weed whacker weapon that we used, and I, along with the director, went to a hardware store and we picked that out because the guy said, I said, what is that used for? I've never seen a tool like that. And he said, it's used for trimming limbs. Perfect.
Kane also worked as the stunt coordinator on the film, sometimes in full Jason costume, which helps get a quicker response from his crew.
It seems like I do a little bit of growling before I ask someone to do something. Yeah, hey, no problem. I'll be right there.
Kane assures us that this is indeed the last Jason film. He says you can tell by the film's title.
He has a specific goal he must reach before the end of the movie or end up in hell. And you know what happens, don't we?
For those of you who wish to keep score, in 9 movies over a span of 13 years, Jason has done away with 113 victims.
So, with both Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees officially dead, it only made sense that they would be resurrected almost immediately. Well, to be fair, Jason didn't come back until Jason X in the early 2000s. But Freddy, on the other hand, rose his claw from the grave in less than 3 years. But this time, things were a little different.
Mark it, common mark. I'm doing a film about my nightmares as I'm dreaming them. In order for the movie to continue, it was dependent on me having more nightmares. Well, fortunately, I did.
I'm a little frightened by what Wes may have tapped into. I frankly felt that it was over when we did the final nightmare.
In a town where movies go over schedule and directors go over budget, something far more evil is out of control.
The world of horror films suffered its own terror today as 2 of Hollywood's best-known special effects technicians were found dead.
Part of the theme of the movie is becoming like part of the making of the movie.
Can you come with me in my dreams?
I think that only happens in the movies.
What happens when the story dies? The evil is set free. Now that the films have ended, the genie's out of the bottle. That's what the nightmares are telling me, and that's what I'm writing.
This is still a script we're talking about, right, Wes?
We've decided to cross over out of films into our reality. The only way to stop him is to make another movie.
Oh my God.
The bad man's getting awful close.
You're gonna have to make a choice.
What kind of choice?
Whether or not you're willing to play Nancy one last time.
Cut the effect!
Isn't there somebody who can stop him?
That person's you.
Why me?
It was you that gave Nancy her strength.
Nancy.
Where's my son?
Yeah, every one of us in that series had been somehow touched forever by the phenomenon of Nightmare on Elm Street, you know. Robert Englund was always known as Freddy, and Nancy, Heather and Nancy were inextricable. New Line Cinema had sort of been built on it. So when I came away from that conversation, I called up Bob Shea and I said, you know, I think I want to make a movie about the phenomenon of the movie and use that as the basis and jump outside the stories entirely, and also try to deal with this whole idea of censorship and whether horror films are good or bad or whether they cause people to do things. Because that has been sort of a growing and insistent question continuously asked of me, and I think everybody else making horror films, is, aren't you afraid your films cause this or that? And my sense was, again, going all the way back to Greek mythology, is there's a lot of great literature that is about horror, and that somehow a story about horror, in a sense, exercises it or gives it a form. It's the same as Nancy dragging the hat out of her dream. It's the beginning of being able to come to terms with it. And that if you were to prevent these stories, you would, in a sense, be allowing something that is ineffable to sort of travel unimpeded through our consciousness, because it would not have a name, it would not have a shape given to it, so that in any sense we could recognize it. So that became the essence of it. You know, stopping the stories of Freddy has really allowed Freddy to cross over into real life. And it was kind of a subtle warning to the censors on my part to say, you know, back off unless you want to experience the real thing rather than seeing it in cinema, you know. And it also seemed to be the freshest way to approach the kind of the 10th year anniversary of the genre, which it, in fact, that was. Almost to the month, it was the 10th year of the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
2 years later, in 1996, West would return to the slasher genre to once again turn it on its proverbial head.
You're such a little lapdog. He's got killer printed all over his forehead.
Okay. Really? Why'd the cops let him go, smart guy?
Because obviously they don't watch enough movies. This is standard horror movie stuff. Prom Night Revisited, man.
I think it's her father.
He's probably dead. His body will come popping up in the last reel somewhere. Eyes gouged out, fingers cut off, teeth knocked out. See, the police are always off track with this shit. If they'd watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Scares you. Traps you. Fear.
Don't trust anyone. Ever.
Feels good to get things out in the open and scream about them. It is a film about a group of kids that all love scary movies, who are then put in a situation where they are being preyed on by an anonymous killer. They find themselves unwillingly sometimes in those very cliche situations they sort of thought were so clever and fun to watch when they're watching scary movies.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney. You like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number 1, you can never have sex. Sex equals death.
Don't have sex, you die. That would pretty much be Wes Craven's message to youth of America. Abstinence, key.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
It goes from being sort of funny as you recognize classic film situations to terrifying when you see that it's really happening, and kind of baffling and intriguing because all of these things become sort of woven up in a single net of who is the killer, and which is kind of an impenetrable mystery, as it turns out in this film.
The police are always off track. If they watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
The first 30 pages of the script were probably like the most exciting 30 pages that I'd ever read.
I freaked out, and I put it down. And then I finished the next day during the light.
So, who are you?
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?
Uncovering the dark side of yourself and confronting it and chasing it away. That's what the movie's been about to me.
I was definitely dealing with a lot of depth in the character. When you try and find those levels, when you find a character, you don't want to just go with what's on the page. I do a lot of fighting with a couple of the characters in the film.
Jeez. Nice shot.
Right. Like that?
Man, that was a good punch.
Nev, you nailed it.
Looks like we've got a serial killer on our hands.
Well, serial killer's not really accurate. Gotta knock off a couple more to get that title.
Well, we can hope, can't we?
I've always been a Wes Craven fan. I'm scared of him.
Wes Craven was sitting in the lobby of Miramax, and I recognized, as soon as I got off the elevator, I was like, that's Wes Craven, that's Wes Craven. And I had someone come up and they said, Wes, Kevin, Wes. And he went, Kevin Williamson? I said, yeah. He goes, I read your script. It was really scary. And I thought, I can lay down and die.
Well, it was funny because, my name's even mentioned.
The killer's still out there? Don't go there, Sam. You're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick or something.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
Well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
I kind of wanted to take that out, you know. I did not write that line.
With the amalgamation of Kevin's script and Wes's direction, I knew you couldn't go wrong, because Wes would bring Kevin's brilliance to life in the most graceful way.
It's like, you know, you're a junkie. You want that, you know, you want that scary feeling. And a lot of people, you know, it's like a drug. You want more.
You want to go into a dark theater, have the lights turn out, and just there's something about being scared out of your wits that has always appealed to me, and I think it appeals to everybody.
They go to scary movies because they already have certain fears. And the movie brings it out in a way that's fun because you know you're not going to be hurt. Like something has been exercised, some terrible tension has been relieved momentarily, and so it performs some sort of arcane service to the psyche.
Ready, Ed? Action!
And the best movie is...
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody of the MTV generation who finally gave some recognition to the kind of films that we all like to go see, really. And to the fantastic cast that is behind me, to Drew Barrymore and Nev and Courtney and Rose and David and Skeet and Matthew and... who am I forgetting?
Jamie.
Jamie, thank you. And many others, Henry Winkler. To the great producers of the film, Marianne Madalena, who's been my partner for 10 years. I have a great friend and a wonderful producer, Kathy Conrad, Carrie Woods. I could go on, but I won't. But thank you very much for all of us. It was a fun picture to make. You couldn't have made had a nicer group of people make such a scary film, so thank you very much.
After Scream became a sleeper hit, the next few years would bring in a new era of slashers. These films were different from their predecessors, picking up on the near ritualistic execution of slasher tropes, which had been mined repeatedly throughout the 1980s. The almost 4-year cycle, which emerged in late 1996 with the release of Scream, and lasted into 2000 with the release of Scream 3 and Cherry Falls, was a minor cultural phenomenon, one that sought to reunite the cachet of slashers in the teen market.
So the boy and girl are making out, right? When they hear over the radio that this lunatic killer's escaped from an insane asylum.
You're telling it wrong. Girl stays in the car and she hears this, like, scratching sound.
Oh, he's been decapitated and he was gutted with a hook.
Four friends.
A toast to us.
Each with a promising future that's about to be buried by a secret in their past.
I think he's dead.
We can't just leave him here.
Oh, tell me, little Miss Prelaw, what's the charge for manslaughter? We make a pact and take this to our grave.
From the creator of Scream comes I Know What You Did Last Summer, a psychological thriller from director Jim Gillespie and writer Kevin Williamson, starring Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Brian Philippe, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
I love being scared. I love thrillers, and I think it's so rare that things actually scare you.
It's all things that are incredibly plausible, and I think that makes it that much more frightening.
When I read the script, I was terrified. Like, I wouldn't keep the script in my room.
When Kevin Williamson wrote it, he like brought horror film back to what it should be for a movie called Scream.
Behind you!
I think the horror genre is definitely back. I mean, I think it's back with a vengeance. But the trick is now it's different. You know, it's escalated. I think the audiences are more sophisticated. So what you have to do is you have to give them the unexpected. You know, when you bury the past, you got to make sure it stays buried. And in this case, it's coming for them.
Somebody sent this to me. Oh my God. What if somebody saw us? What if somebody else was there that night?
Someone knows.
I know what you did last summer. Ooh.
What if he's still alive?
She's incredibly frightened, as anybody would be in this situation.
And it's almost like that still moment when you can't breathe.
Knowing that you did something so awful and you're waiting to be found out.
And all the letter says on it is, I know what you did last summer. There's no return address, there's no name, nothing.
Somebody tried to kill you last night. We have to go to the police.
If he wanted me dead, he could have done it.
He plays mind games with all 4 characters.
If you don't know who he is, how can you stop him?
He's hunting these 4 people, literally hunting them.
Hello? You never know where he's gonna turn up, ever. Which is why I'm scared to go home at night. There isn't anything that is going to keep these people from this horrific thing that's like crowding their lives.
They're terrified. They're not in control. They don't know what to do.
And the fear seems to surround you more.
I think what Kevin Williamson and director Jim Gillespie has created are great characters that we want to see live. We don't want to see get hooked.
We like to be frightened, we like to be held in suspense. What I was looking for was the ability. The 2 girls, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that is now, a hit show. Jennifer Love Hewitt in Party of 5 is a well-known face.
Ryan has a classic movie star good looks that you actually see underneath that he's a much more complex character. And Freddie Prinze Jr., who plays Ray in the movie, he brings so much heart to it and so much soul.
They have to pay for what they've done, but they have to pay in a way that's far out of scale with what really happened.
And that's where they end up seeing the blood in your face.
A lot of the scenes that we've done so far, I've been literally, truthfully terrified.
Sometimes you're watching things being filmed and you know the outcome and you know the story, but it's still incredibly creepy.
The fisherman comes after her, and it's a horrible, horrible chase scene where she knows that this is it. Now it's serious. She's really running for her life. No one likes to be scared in real life, but when you know it's for fun, I think it's a very exciting thing.
A lot of my friends are like, we have to go see this movie because it's really going to freak us out.
Every girl, I hope, wants to cuddle with her boyfriend a little more, and every boy is praying that she gets scared and holds on to him.
What are you waiting for, huh? He's just out there and he's watching us and waiting for us to unravel.
The wait is over.
I know what you did last summer.
With all this new slasher hype in the air, what better time to bring back everybody's favorite friend to the end, as well as his blushing and deadly bride.
Child's Play 4. Who would ever think it would come to this? But this time, Chucky gets a little action, if you know what I mean.
I think a number of things make this movie different from the other ones. First, the direction, I think, really elevates the series to a new level, certainly a new level of visual sophistication. The actors, we have actors like Jennifer Tilly, who's an Oscar nominee.
For God's sake, Chucky, drag yourself into the 90s. Stabbings went out with Bundy and Dahmer. You look like Martha Stewart with that thing.
Along with Brad Dourif, who's been along for all the movies. He's also an Oscar nominee.
What the hell? I need the exercise.
I play Tiffany, and she's this white trash trailer park girl that turns into a homicidal little doll. And it's kind of a long story. She used to be the girlfriend of Chucky before he turned into the doll. And so I guess Chucky's original name was Charles Ray. And she gets very turned on by killing, and she's attracted to bad guys. And she has a boyfriend in the movie at the time that you meet her called Damien that's very inadequate, and she's not real happy with him because he won't kill people like Charles did, and so she's trying to bring Chucky back to life.
One of the ways that Chucky has changed is that a humor has come out of him, a kind of a black comedy, dark humor, and there were moments of that in the first and second and third films, and every time those moments happened, the audience really responded. It was kind of an emotional roller coaster of scary, scary, and then Chucky would just have kind of a throwaway line and the audience would laugh and applaud.
The humor in this movie definitely sets it apart from the other films. It's definitely ratcheted up a notch from the other ones. And the fact that the dolls really are the leads in this film, whereas in the previous ones, Chucky was a little bit more of a peripheral presence. This time he really is front and center. He and Tiffany carry the film, and that's a big difference. And finally, it's a love story. Chucky gets lucky.
This film is my first romantic lead, and it's part of an overall strategy to launch me into the leading man status. I got a bunch of projects in development, both as actor and producer, and me and Sharon Stone have been talking about doing something together for a while now.
Jesse and Jade, who are the teenage characters at the beginning of the story, they decide to run away and get married, and unwittingly they're transporting these dolls with them. They intend to make a delivery and get some money so that with that money they can start their new life. Of course, they don't realize that these dolls are committing murders along the way, murders which the kids themselves are then implicated for.
What Chucky and Tiffany want is to get to the grave, to be able to transmogrify their souls into that of these two handsome young kids. And as Tiffany says, it's almost like real estate. We're kind of renting these bodies that we're in right now, but we're looking to buy. And you happen to be in the wrong place at the right time.
And who the hell is Martha Stewart?
My idol. And what does Martha tell you to do when guests drop by for dinner and you haven't had time to shop? You improvise.
When we were casting the picture, I told the studio, there's only one actress in Hollywood with big enough talents to play Chucky's bride, and that's Jennifer Tilly.
When they sent me the script and they said that Ronnie was going to direct it, I got really excited because I thought, wow, this is really different to bring that sort of maverick Hong Kong sensibility to Chucky, which is sort of a formulaic film that everybody knows. And I thought, because they were saying, David Kirshner and Don Mancini were saying to me that they wanted to reinvent the Chucky series for the 90s. And I thought that it was really a cool choice that they hired Ronnie, who's kind of known for his visual style and will bring a different sensibility to it.
Always learning from the old masters like Hitchcock and Brian De Palma and all those old masters. And they always have, when you look at their films, it's good that when you scare people and then you sort of, before you go to another scare, you sort of give them another relaxation, so give it another comic relief, and then hit it again with a shock or with a horror thing. I think that would keep people on the edge, on the edge of the seat, so that they would pay attention, So it's a game. It's a game you play with the audiences, which is for me, I think is a great challenge.
It's kind of a parody on the Bride of Frankenstein. In fact, we even have little snippets of the old Frankenstein movies in the film, and especially because when she sews back together Chucky's face and puts the body parts on him, it's sort of reminiscent of Dr. Frankenstein creating his monster.
I was in a video store and I saw a copy of The Bride of Frankenstein, and I just thought, wow, that would be great if we were able to create a bride for Chucky. And so I spoke to Don Mancini about the concept, and he weaved this great tale for the bride of Chucky.
I think one of the things about Chucky, why people like him, is I think a lot of people find dolls very, very creepy. I think it's sort of like clowns that people find dolls. The fact that it's something that looks so much like a human and yet doesn't, it's sort of distorted. And I think everybody's had that nightmare when they're looking at their dolls at night that they think, ooh, wouldn't it be creepy if their dolls started to talk? And I think there's something funny about dolls, that they're always smiling, that they could be doing really evil things while they're still smiling. I think that that's a really creepy concept.
He's bad, and then yet he's cute. Even though he does bad things, like he killed people, he do some violent things, but he is somebody who doesn't care. I mean, he's just so focused to go his own way, to get what he wants, And in a way, it's a fantasy figure. I think everybody would love, to be able to do that.
For me, the greatest thing was when people, after the first movie, said to me, and I've heard it on and on, that they cannot walk into their kid's room now without thinking of Chucky. And it just really gives them quite a bit of a chill. And that's probably the greatest compliment you could have. I remember reading Steven Spielberg saying that about Jaws, that people would never feel the same way about the beach, where it was a wonderful place to go. It was a very different world after that. And from what people have said about the nursery, I think we've done the same thing.
I may have settled down in the movie, but in real life, I'm still a chick magnet. Barbie and I are still kind of an item, of course, but after the movie opens, I'm heading down to Rio with Scary Spice, man.
And if we're going to bring back one horror superstar, then why not another?
At a secluded private school,
We could have a Halloween party, a roaming orgy.
I love the way this man thinks.
4 students are about to learn
I'm not who you think I am.
their teacher's terrifying secret.
Who is that?
My brother.
Michael!
This summer, terror won't be taking a vacation. Halloween H2O.
Oh my God.
Rated R starts Wednesday at theaters everywhere.
After the train wreck that was Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, everyone was surprised Dimension Films and Miramax had the gall to bring old Paleface back yet again. Still, bring him back they did, in a film to mark the 20th anniversary of the original Halloween. And you know something? They actually did a decent job this time. Perhaps realizing the previous film had become a confusing mess with a plot consisting of evil cults, a convoluted bloodline, adopted children, and Paul Rudd. Halloween H2O scraps it all and instead provides an alternative timeline in which the events of Halloween 4, Halloween 5, and Halloween 6 never happened. OG final girl Laurie Strode is the ultimate hardened horror survivor. When she goes up against her biggest fear, it's a payoff 2 decades in the making. Perhaps best of all, H2O is old-fashioned in its approach to scares, less interested in outsmarting its audience than it is lining up the pieces and knocking them down with a super sharp kitchen knife. And then we got this.
Scream was what you call an unfunny spoof. See, Scream was like, it just said some things. We're doing the things that Scream thought about doing, but didn't do.
Why are you doing this, Bobby?
Why?
Why? Did Scream have a plot?
No.
Did I Know What You Did Last Summer make any sense? Don't think so.
I was the first A50 that Scream ever got. I love Scream to death. Not just because this is a Miramax movie and they told me to say that, but I truly did love Scream. Miramax, Dimension, they brothers.
Scream took a satirical look at horror flicks. This is a parody of the satire. So we directly parody those scenes.
Scream was cool. Then Scream 2 started to get a little annoying. And then I Know What You Did Last Summer made us go, you know what? It's time to parody them.
A spoof of a satire, that's what I like to say, because Scream was definitely a satire, and that made a big challenge for us, because I would say to the guys, they already told that joke. So you can't go where they went. We had to go somewhere else.
Parodies, it's the hardest. They're the hardest to write because there's so many different levels of jokes that you have to hit. Plus, you have to keep the story moving. You got to keep the story arcing.
So it made the writing process definitely more challenging.
We co-wrote, me, Sean, Phil Bowman, Buddy Johnson, and work with Keenan. Keenan oversaw the whole process, and we love working with him. He's been directing us our whole life.
So it's like doing a movie with your friends.
We really do have a lot of fun working with each other, and my mother makes us.
It was a really good idea, and I thought, okay, this is the one. You guys go write this. And they went off with a couple of their buddies, and they wrote it, brought it to me. I gave them notes on it, and we went back and forth, about 10 drafts.
Like 20 drafts.
Yeah. And even after the studio greenlit it, I said, okay, let's go back to it.
And then after you get all the references in terms of the horror film, you have to go to pop culture and find out what's funny about pop culture.
You do it in layers.
And then you go, who's the characters and what's funny about them. And then you pass it to Keenan, who tells you, it all sucks, redo everything.
Yeah, and then we all sat down and punched it up and added more stuff.
You work you harder than Kathy Lee at a sweatshop. Urban Legends.
The Blair Witch Project. And I Know What You Did Last Summer.
It's just like, put some young teens in a movie, let them show their tits and get killed. And then, you know, that's your horror film for the 90s.
What's cool about this one is that it's the first spoof movie towards, like, the teen audience movies, you know?
It's enjoyable to make fun of those movies because I think they're just silly to begin with. They're just so serious that everything becomes a joke.
Tell me your name and I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Oops. I farted. It's great to be able to make fun of yourself. And, you know, I've worked on so many sets where it's so uptight. And, you know, for instance, Baywatch, and you're taking it so serious. And there's so many times I wanted to trip and fall in the sand or make fun of it. And that's what's so great about it, because these movies are so popular, these, like, scary teen movies. And now we get to go in there and have fun with it.
You watch horror movies, and they're always so dumb. You're always like, why did she go in? Why?
Don't go in there!
Y'all seen the movies. You should know better. No, don't go open the door. There's someone in the, you know, you sitting there yelling at the theater. You know somebody's in there, and the jackass opened the door, and guess what?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Please don't. Please. I'm just a day player.
You didn't know that? This is kind of like taking all those stereotypes and going, look, I want y'all to see how stupid you look in this. And then, you know, I want people to be able to laugh at it.
I'm in the house. Do you know where I am? I could be anywhere. I'm like the wind, baby. Yeah. Where am I?
You're behind the couch.
There's a lot of range, even though the characters are fairly one-dimensional, that you can take them to a lot of different places that normally you can't.
That's what's so cool about doing a spoof. It's, you can really make it your own. You don't have to do exactly what they did.
Gail Hailstorm standing out front of the police station where I'm going to try and get a glimpse of Cindy Campbell, the young girl who was attacked earlier this evening. You're on my foot, fat shit!
And of course, not being as tall and as thin as Courtney. That's another twist I put on it.
Cindy, your ass looks fat!
In order to be funny, you gotta push the envelope, because, you know, it's like nowadays, especially people, in terms of comedy, you know, they're accepting the broader stuff, the more cutting edge stuff. That's what comedy is nowadays. They might edit this part out.
If the audience is laughing, they're laughing. Then you just keep pushing.
Yeah, once they stop laughing, then you pull back a little too far.
So, once again, the slasher genre will go into hibernation mode. The 2000s would see the rise of the remake, and things got much more torture-y. Just like their 80s predecessors, these cycle of films' ambitions were meek, their achievements meeker still, and their cost-to-profit ratio stellar. Now let's all watch some glorious one-liners from a little underrated 90s slasher flick by the name of Dr. Giggles.
He should have kept his hands to himself.
I know. It sucks.
If you think that's bad, wait till you get my bill. You may be having second thoughts, but when you wake up, you'll have a change of heart. Is there a doctor in the house?